Hello, folks. Welcome back to Chris Wyatt at Real Chris Wyatt. This is Chris live in central Pennsylvania. I go through all news sources from all over the place and around the world, and I look for things that might be of interest to my viewers, or to me at least. And the behavior of people who claim to be Americans and people who are Americans over the past month has been truly atrocious when it's come to what's happened in Gaza and what's happened in Israel. So here's an op-ed piece written by a Jewish American in the New York Times, published today. And I don't know if it came out today, but I saw this in the New York Times today. But it's by Alana Zaitchik. Okay, and this is what she had to say. I'm going to read the op-ed to you and then comment on what she had to say because this is particularly important. Now, I'm doing this on my original channel because it's while it's Israel and the Palestinian Authority and the Middle East, so international news. I am putting on my U.S. channel because I don't want to risk my current channel, which is growing, being censored, and I fear that this will get censorship by the political leftists who run this platform and others. So there's nothing here that I'm saying that is hateful, that is problematic. It's simply statements of fact and this woman's opinion. And I'm commenting on it, which is perfectly legitimate. But you know how these platforms are. So let's go with it from there. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate you being here on the original channel. This is the OG, the original gangster, the original channel that I've had since 2005, 2006, something like that, that was sent off into the gulag for 23 months by the censors at YouTube over a non-violation of their policies. And finally, they assented and recognized that they didn't violate their policies after that fascist who used to run YouTube left. But here we go. This is an op-ed in the New York Times appearing today, the 5th of November, by Ms. Alana Zaitchik. Ms. Zaitchik is a media professional who lives in Brooklyn and working on her family's Bring Our Family Home campaign. She has a story on Instagram. So you can find Alana Zaitchik, Zeitchik, Zaitchik. Sounds like an East European Jewish name. On October 24th, my brother and I went to the United Nations to watch an Emergency Security Council meeting in response to the war in Israel and Gaza. As the Israeli Minister of Foreign Affairs listed the names and held up photos of some of the Israeli children who were taken hostage by Hamas, a white woman in her 30s stood up near us in the gallery to protest. She held up a handmade Free Palestine sign. The disruption should have been jarring, but by this point in the war, I'm accustomed to this response from those I once regarded as my liberal peers. I've seen too often the hijacking of the cause of Palestinian liberation to stand against the lives of Israeli children who have been in captivity for 4 weeks. 3 of them are my little cousins. Now, what I have to say is, Ms. Zaitchik, you get what you deserve. Progressives have never been liberal. They've never been caring about others. They don't care about anyone. They use people. They are the bigots. They are the homophobes. They're the transphobes. They are the racists. They are the intolerant scum of the earth. And they disguise themselves as cuddly, caring koalas. And they're not. This is what you get for voting for liberals. This is what you get for voting Democratic. This is what you get for tolerating criminal alien invaders in our midst who violate our sovereignty. You think you're doing the world better, but you've undermined Western civilization and the ideals of freedom and liberty. So you should not be shocked, Miss Zaitchik. On October 7th, I spent the day waiting for news from my family in Israel. My cousin Sharon Cuneo, her husband David, their 3-year-old twins Emma and Yuli, my cousin Danielle Aloni, and her 5-year-old daughter Amelia were hiding together in their bomb shelter. Now, why were they hiding in a bomb shelter? Because Hamas was attacking their kibbutz. While Hamas went on a murderous rampage through their kibbutz. The last contact my family had from them was a WhatsApp message simply saying, "Help, we're dying." By evening, my aunt had confirmed our fears. My 6 relatives were missing from kibbutz Nir Oz, a community in the south of Israel about 3 miles from Gaza, now known as a scene of brutality and destruction. An hour after discovering they were missing, I spotted some of my family on a TikTok video. They were surrounded. They were being carted away, surrounded by machine gun terrorists shouting, "Allahu Akbar." The pain I experienced in that moment and so many after has been so sharp it follows my every breath. I wake up each morning only to remember again my family is being held hostage by terrorists. And I empathize with you, ma'am. It's a horrific situation, an intolerable situation, one that the world should condemn, that the United Nations should be all over. that legitimate states in the Middle East should be condemning, but they're not. None of those actors are. And none of your so-called liberal friends are condemning it. In fact, they are promoting the opposite. And you think that you're alone, but you're not. The vast majority of Americans feel the same way that you do about this horror. Unfortunately, they're censored by social media and by the mainstream media. Recently, my brother and I hung kidnap posters of our family around Williamsburg in Brooklyn, a posh little neighborhood, to say the least. A fabulously liberal community I've been part of for over a decade. Within a day, almost all of them had been ripped down. Some were replaced with posters reading, "Honor the Martyr." The behavior feels so senseless, even hateful, but it is not these overt acts that make me feel so isolated. Well, this is what we get from people with shameful conduct, who hate America, who hate Israel, who hate Jews, who hate Christians, who hate white Anglo-Saxons, and blame white Anglo-Saxons who built the world and made it possible for them to travel from place to place through the air, on boats, navigate, use mobile telephones, have internet communications, eat modern nutritious food at their fingertips at relatively affordable prices. White Anglo-Saxon world made that possible, and therefore they hate that part of the world. And you're part of the problem, ma'am. You've supported and propped up this sick, twisted worldview that treats some people better than others and hates on Christians, hates on Jews. Yes, I know you're Jewish, but you support these people. They were always like this. This isn't a new development. They always hated Jews. You just thought it was okay because you were in the crowd at Williamsburg. But they've always hated you, and that will never change. She said, instead, I feel the loneliest when I scroll through Instagram and see friends and acquaintances, Jews and non-Jews alike, reposting images calling for a ceasefire from Jewish Voice for Peace in between their fall foliage photos. These are the same people who watch my stories but who have not once shared the faces of my 3-year-old cousins or demanded the release of the hostages, despite my increasingly desperate cries for help and humanity. The silence is suffocating. What I wouldn't give to not know this pain, to have a different truth than the one I'm carrying. Ma'am, we're with you, 100%. Hundreds of millions of people around the world who find this conduct vile and can easily divorce the actions of Hamas from Israel's response. They're two separate things and long overdue. This is a group that openly advocates in its charter genocide, the elimination of the Jewish state, and killing the Jews. And any American or foreign visitor who's here, who has a green card and lives in this country legitimately, that stands up and perpetrates and propagates that garbage is a traitor to Western civilization. And if there are a green card holder here as a guest, should have it revoked. Nah, I'm not talking about free speech. People are welcome to their free speech. But threatening Americans, threatening their lives, threatening the United States should lead to a revocation of residency. Simple as that. People want to protest, they can protest. But climbing the gates of the White House, attacking the White House lawns, you looking for an insurrection, Democrats? It's being led by members of your political party and your fellow travelers who attacked the White House. It's being led by scumbags in London who poured paint on Lord Nelson's statue. What does that have to do with Gaza? Not a damn thing. These are unwelcome intruders, criminal alien invaders who need to be removed. All around me, I've witnessed a silence so enormous it feels cacophonous. I've seen former co-workers be so quick to share unverified headlines fed by Hamas, yet say only a few private words of sympathy to me. It would appear they believe my suffering to be collateral damage in service of some universal truth they hold higher. Is it really impossible to hold these two truths at the same time, that both Israeli and Palestinian civilians are suffering at great cost? Or are they simply unwilling to express that publicly? I'm not sure which is worse. No, it's not a question of them not willing to say it publicly. They hate you because you're a Jew. They hate you because you're a Jew. But Christians love you. You're Abrahamic people, as are Muslims. People of the book, people of the Bible, the Torah, the Quran. Christians don't hate. They have nothing but love for Jews. People misusing the name of Christianity, using the name of Islam, hate Jews. And ma'am, those are your friends on the political left from Williamsburg. The people who vote for the likes of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in Queens. The people who vote for Rashida Tlaib in Michigan. The people who vote for Cori Bush in Missouri. The people who vote for Ilhan Omar in Minneapolis. They are anti-Semitic Jew haters, anti-American treasonous bastards. And you're part of the problem. Liberal Jews who consistently vote for people who hate them and have always hated them. But see, the thing with you folks is that it was always okay for them to hate white Anglo-Saxon Protestant males. Because maybe you do too. Maybe you don't. But it was okay as long as the establishment was attacked because they weren't coming for the Jews. Now they're coming for the Jews, and you find that all along we, Christians and patriots, have always been on your side. We've never abandoned the Jews. We've never abandoned legitimate Muslims who love this country and worship in freedom and peace here. I felt lost watching progressive friends, women's rights activists, influencers, and celebrities I admire stumble to find the words to condemn the atrocities committed by Hamas against Israeli citizens. Among them, 6 of the human beings I love most in the world. Even as I sit here thinking of my family and some 240 other Israeli hostages, I scroll through my newsfeed and cry for the innocent Palestinian children and lives lost in Gaza. I look at the face of Mohammed Abu Jab, a man in Los Angeles who is trying to save his grandmother in Gaza, and I see my own pain reflected in his expression. And we agree with you. We agree with you. What's happening to civilians is unacceptable. It's intolerable. But if you think it's actually going to end, if Israel ends its effort to exterminate Hamas, then you're delusional and you're part of the problem. This situation exists because Hamas committed atrocities. And it exists because Israelis abandoned Gaza in 2005. There are no Israeli settlements in Gaza since 2005. They completely abandoned it and left it to the Palestinian Authority, which Hamas has used to wrest control of the government and to rule over these people and to use it as a base of operations to launch tens of thousands of rockets into civilian settlements in Israel, while the world looked the other way, while you Jewish liberals looked the other way and said virtually nothing. The fact that your relatives had to go to a bomb shelter should tell you just how failed your approach to this situation has always been. You and your friends in Williamsburg, your liberal progressive friends. Again and again, I hear that Israel is a country of white colonizers and oppressors. Some of my bewilderment is in my very skin. My maternal grandparents, Avraham and Sarah, grew up in a tiny rural village in central Yemen. Like other Jews in the Arabian Peninsula, Yemenite Jews were persecuted second-class citizens throughout what are known as Dhimmi laws, the denigration of non-Muslims before the law. In 1949, after pogroms against Jews in Yemen, my grandparents set out by foot and donkey on an arduous journey to the capital, Sana'a. From there, they were airlifted during Operation Magic Carpet to the newly formed state of Israel. As refugees fleeing oppression in their birth country, they began their lives in Israel in poverty. Slowly, they built a humble but comfortable life and raised 5 children, among them my mother. You see, it's liberal Jews like yourself, and I don't mean to pick on Miss Chick. I'm not picking on her. But this is the problem. You've supported people who hate you. You think because your skin is brown that they like you, because you're a Jew they like you. They should like you as a human being, whether you're white, brown, or black, Jewish, Muslim, or Christian. But they don't, and they never have. And they're historically ignorant of the plight of Jews around the world. So maybe you can imagine my surprise the first time I heard my Israeli family called white colonizers. Yeah, because you're not white, and you're also not a colonizer. Your family refugees, welcome into a new state, the historical home of the indigenous population of Judea. When did we become white? And how could a family fleeing persecution be perceived as colonizers? I've heard this description for years, and you ignored it. Perhaps I shrugged it off too easily. Indeed, you did. But you never heard it from us. You never heard it from conservatives. You never heard it. You heard it from media who called people in the extreme right conservatives who are not conservatives. They're extreme right wackadoodles. Or people who are legitimate in the middle who are misportrayed. But genuine conservatives, genuine Christians, genuine patriots, people who love others, not leftist progressives, have never said that about you. But it's not the catchphrases or even the loudest and most inflammatory voices that have made me feel so betrayed. Rather, it's those who have remained silent when they otherwise would never be. Like the women who lifted the Me Too movement alongside me, yet now refuse to cry out against even the violence of women or rape reported by Israeli military forensics team. Because Me Too was a fraudulent movement. It was a misandric movement, a hate men movement. Just because a few people actually committed offenses doesn't make men the enemy. But people like yourself perceive men as the enemy and attack men, especially white Anglo-Saxon Protestant men. You have created the circumstances that allows this sort of cognitive dissonance, this intellectual dishonesty by the political progressive left, your friends in Williamsburg and around this country, in Europe and the Middle East, undermine, destroy our countries, and destroy our civilization. And you need an attitude check, ma'am. Again, I'm not attacking Miss Sidechick directly. News reports about the sickening crimes committed at the hands of Hamas continue to come out of Israel, but the left seems to be focused only on the response from Israel. Undeniably a devastating one. Indeed it is. One never imagined that the left, my own world, would not be able to at least hold space for both Israeli and Palestinian civilians. Then you just are sleepwalking through life. They've always hated Israel. They've always hated Jews. The last time that progressives had anything in favor of Israel was before 1982 and the Bekaa Valley and the Israeli invasion of southern Lebanon. That's when the game changed. Since then, they've hated Jews, and their anti-Semitism has come to the fore, and we see it each and every day. They haven't had much strength to take on this silence. Since October 7th, I've focused all my energy on taking action to urge my family's immediate and safe release. I spoke with the UN. I've been on endless broadcasts and been forced to recount my cousin's harrowing last voice message too many times to count. I've poured myself into this all while struggling with almost indescribable grief. Outside the Jewish community has proved to be a lonely struggle. No, it's not. Get out of your frickin' bubble in Williamsburg and look around you. People have spoke out. People have defended Jews. People all over TikTok, all over the internet, where they're not censored, have been defending Jews and what's happened in Israel. And it wasn't just Jews. Christians, Buddhists, Muslims were killed. Palestinians, Jews, Americans, Germans, Brits, all murdered and kidnapped by these vile, grotesque criminals. Get out of your bubble. Wake up to the real world. Come over, flyover country. There were no apolitical spaces created to help the hostage families hold the weight of this pain. At the beginning of all this, I promised I would scream to the end of the earth for my family, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Everyone in my large extended family is mobilized alongside me, demanding the safe return of our loved ones and of all the hostages. We've been told by the Israeli Defense Forces my family's alive in Gaza, and for now, this gives us a glimmer of hope. In Israel, my Aunt Riki, whose core family of 10 has been reduced to 4 around her Shabbat table, is trying to stay upright while bearing a mother's anguish. People come by daily and bring food as if they were sitting Shiva. I am grateful she is being held up by her community here in my home. I no longer know whom I can turn to in my grief. Well, Miss Alana Zaitchik, that's because you live in a liberal world and the liberals are destroying the world. Wake up and smell the coffee. And is my response political? Of course it's political to your op-ed, because your words are political. And you're showing your anguish at how the political left have abandoned your people, have abandoned your family, have abandoned reason, have abandoned intelligence. Well, most of us haven't. Most of us stand with Israel. And that's the truth. That's the truth. Get out of your liberal bubble. Stop being biased and bigoted against people who aren't political leftists. And for the Palestinians who live in America, who are visitors with a green card, who want to protest, feel free to protest. But step out of line, whether you're an American or Palestinian, and destroy public property. And you're no longer a protester. Now you're a felon. For the Americans of Palestinian origin, who are patriotic Americans, then you should be able to see both sides of this argument. For the Jews, you should finally wake up and see who your true friends are. The people who care about you. Why are there so many Christian missions that raise money for Jews in Eastern Europe who are hungry and starving in Russian Federation and other parts of Eastern Europe, to bring them relief, to bring them care packages throughout the year? Christian organizations do that. Christians do that. Eastern Europe, why should Christians care about Jews in the Russian Federation? They do. And they've been doing it for decades. And the silence from the political left and from the likes of Miss Zaitchik, who hangs out with her progressive liberal friends in Williamsburg, has been deafening as well. And with that, Miss Zaitchik, I have empathy for your family and the horrors that they've undergone, the indescribable, grotesque actions of Hamas, which are not acceptable. Israel's response is legal, it's justified, but they have a moral obligation to do as little damage as possible and harm as few civilians as possible. Given the actions of Hamas and putting their military activities right in the hearts of clinics and schools and hospitals and keeping people at the point of a gun in northern Gaza, that proves to be very challenging. It is Hamas that has committed crimes against humanity. It is Hamas committing war crimes. And it is long overdue for liberal Jewish Americans and progressive Americans to wake up to that reality. You don't have to like Israel to acknowledge what Hamas did as a crime against humanity. You don't have to like Palestine to recognize that the death of civilians in Palestine is a horrible anguish that no one should suffer. But you do have to be a clear-thinking, cogent, lucid human being to be honest about these things. And sadly, Ms. Zaitchik, that's what we have so few of in the 21st century. Willful ignorance, cognitive dissonance, and outright lies and propaganda. Fight them. Stand together with those of us who believe in the truth. I'll spread the word about your op-ed. I'll let people know about it. I'll encourage them to read it. And I'll ask people to do what they can to ease the suffering of your family. And I'm not a progressive. I'm not a leftist. I'm a patriotic American. Not because I'm white, not because I'm male, but because I was born in this country. And I ascribe to the ideals of the Constitution and our Declaration of Independence, as well as other founding documents. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And that's how I feel. And we'll stand with you against tyranny and terror. God bless. Have a lovely day, folks. Thoughts and prayers to Miss Zaitchik and her family, and the safe return of her loved ones, so that we don't see more carnage from this grotesque activity. God bless.